He just couldn't stay away from it. The adrenaline of game day, the opportunity to lead and coach student athletes.
I think it was Colin Powell that said, life is a roller coaster. You get on it, you go for a hell of a ride, and it comes back to right where it started. Well, Butler fans, I just punched my ticket for another hell of a ride.
Basketball runs through Thad Matta's veins, and now he's back home, on the bench at his alma mater. Butler rolls out the blue carpet for Thad Matta's return to the basketball cathedral known as Hinkle Fieldhouse. What brought him back to coaching, overcoming health issues, and life growing up in, where else, a tiny town called Hoopeston. Thad Matta, my guest this week on the Business and Beyond podcast. Hello and welcome to episode 83 of the Business and Beyond podcast, presented by PNC. I'm Gary Dick. Thad Matta grew up just 10 miles west of the Indiana border in Hoopeston, Illinois. His dad, Jim, was a revered high school hoops coach. So naturally, Thad grew up with a basketball in his hands, around athletes, in gyms and locker rooms. He was a standout for the Hoopeston East Central High School Corn Jerkers and went on to a solid career at Butler. Once Matta realized an NBA career wasn't in the cards, he got into coaching. Butler, Xavier, and Ohio State, all part of his head coaching journey. Health issues forced Matta to leave the game in 2017, but now he is back, home, on the bench at his beloved Butler University.
And it gives me a great deal of pleasure to welcome Butler University men's head basketball coach Thad Matta to the podcast. And Coach, thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Okay. Does it feel like you're back home now? I mean, in a sense, you have such a obviously rich heritage and tradition with Butler as a player, a student athlete, as a coach previously, and now you're back. Does it feel like you're back home?
It does, obviously. I mean, it's like a wonderful feeling to wake up every day and know that you're going to Butler, to Hinkle Fieldhouse to go to work. You know, I've said this from the day I've taken the job. I've yet to have the euphoric moment of like, wow, I'm back at Butler, because everything's been going so fast, and now. One of the biggest changes is just how much time you spend with your guys in the off season and through the summers. And we had the foreign trip, so we were actually practicing this summer. But no, overall, generally speaking, I mean, just to be back here and be a part of this is something special to me. It really is. Yeah,
Coach, what makes, in your view, Butler a special place? I mean, you kind of seem to wear that on your sleeve. That you're very passionate about Butler, the university, the basketball program. What from your perspective, why is it such a special place?
Well, I think there's several reasons in my mind. I mean, first and foremost, I think what Butler University did for a young Thad Matta coming out of high school, and I think this place did a tremendous job of shaping and molding me and helping me become a man. And a lot of things have changed from that time. But I think one of the things that I really, really love about Butler is, I feel unequivocally that if a young man, his family choose to come to Butler University, when he leaves here, he's going to be better. Obviously, he's going to be educated. Hopefully he's going to be a better basketball player, but he's going to be a man. I've said this, Butler's, it's not a factory. This place doesn't just run people through it. There's such a human element to how this university's run from the top down. I think that's what makes it probably most special to me.
Coach, what brought you back to coaching? You stepped away head coaching duties at Ohio State in 2017. Came back in a sense as an associate athletic director at IU. But I think some people were surprised to see you get back in the back in the coaching game.
Yeah, Gary, it's funny. I don't know. I've had talked to a lot of different schools about their head coaching position in the time that I was out, and nothing ever seemed to feel right. it's funny because this was a tough one for me, just from the standpoint of, I love Laval and was his biggest fan and was hoping like crazy things were going to work out there. And, I just, when the situation, when Barry called me and said, "Hey, I need you to come back," it was just one of those, people think that I'm not a guy that's premeditated, that thinks things through. And I talked to my wife, Barbara, momentarily, and I said, "Hey, what the heck, let's do this." And from that standpoint, it's been back, in terms of the coaching aspect. I think spending last year in Bloomington, being back around a team, being back around a staff, I did enjoy that. But, like I said, it was going to take the right situation for me to come out of retirement. And this was it.
What you did at IU is not like being a head coach. I mean, you're not in the mix, and you seem to be the kind of guy that kind of thrives on that activity, action kind of thing. Is that an accurate assessment?
It is, but I will tell you this now. I enjoyed living on the beach for 4 years, and I say the two things you worry about the most in retirement is you check the weather every morning, see if it's going to be nice outside, and the second is you figure out where you can go to dinner that night. And I like that. I really did. But with that said, being back in and you wake up and you got a game plan every day, and you've got a heck of a job to do. And I think one of the things I probably forgot the most, and it's come to fruition now that I've been back in it, is just how many people you're responsible for when you're a head coach. From your players to their staffs to their families to university, just getting back in getting those thoughts in my mind of hey, we gotta. You got to dot your I's and cross your T's every second of every day is something that I do enjoy that challenge.
Yeah, and Coach, since you were on the bench the last time, a lot has changed. Most recently, name, image, likeness, the transfer portal. What's your reaction to those things? Because it's dramatically changed the landscape in collegiate sports in, I think, multiple ways.
It's one of those things that you've got to have a great attitude about it. And, a lot of coaches I talked to said that, why would you come back into coaching? It's the worst it's ever been. And I'm kind of choosing to just say, hey, whatever, it is what it is, and we're going to deal with it. But from when I was here in 2000, even, finishing at Ohio State in 17, it's a completely different ballgame. There's no question about that. And I think you've got to be innovative. You've got to be creative in terms of what you're doing and how you're doing it now. And ultimately it comes down to, finding the right fit with young men and guys that you've built relationships with and guys that want to be better basketball players.
Any strong feelings, Coach, one way or the other on NIL and what path that's going to take? And see all these stories nationally, like on the football side with schools like Texas A&M, and talk about these massive funds that they're putting together to attract athletes. Where does it go from here?
Well, without a doubt, it's like anything in life. The rich are going to get richer, and the poor will get poor. That is a fact. I don't know exactly how it will all shake out in the end. I think just, from the standpoint of I like the fact that young men are getting paid for their services and that sort of thing. I just hope that there's a educational component for it, because our job as college basketball coaches, as college educators, is to educate our guys and help them be successful for the rest of their lives. And with what we're going to do here at Butler, hopefully we can use that to our advantage.
Interesting, or be interested in your perspective too. Again, so many things changing in the college landscape. The Big Ten's new media deal, $7 billion, Fox, CBS, or NBC as well. And basketball is affected by that. How does it change the landscape on the basketball? I mean, it will on the basketball side as well. What do you think is going to happen there?
I don't have, but man, I wish I did have a crystal ball to see what ahead. I really do. I don't know. I remember back, gosh, I don't even know the year. And the commissioner of the Big Ten was explaining in our basketball meetings that he was going to start this Big Ten network, and everybody was excited about it. But I remember saying, Jim, if you could just do us one favor, keep in mind a Wednesday night game to put it on television in Minneapolis at 8:00 their time, 9:00 our time. We're not getting back till 4:00 in the morning. If you guys could keep that into consideration, and I think now as you look at some of these conference alignments, academics. What does that matter?
What's that? Yeah.
Yeah. And but it's obviously money driven, and you talk about the Big Ten. I mean, I don't know where you grew up, but I was a Midwest guy, and the Big Ten play on Tuesday or on Thursdays and Saturdays.
Yep, absolutely.
And, if you were really good, you played the 1:00 Sunday CBS game or whatever.
Yeah.
Now every game, it seems like in college basketball, is on television, and which is awesome. I mean, it's great, and it just shows you the entertainment component to what's tied into college athletics now.
Coach, how's your health? How are you feeling? I know when you stepped away from Ohio State, had a real serious back situation, had surgery and some complications. How's your health?
I feel good. I think that I'm trying to be as much more mindful as I used to be in terms of myself and my well-being, in terms of just, eating right and staying in shape and doing all those things, because I do know what lies ahead. I mean, the season it's a long journey. Mm-hmm. And, the stronger I am, the better the team will be.
How difficult was it for you physically and maybe mentally as well, those last couple of years at Ohio State, dealing with the back and the health issues you had? How tough was it?
It was a challenge, and it's funny because I don't think people ever really understand, and it's not something you talk publicly about, but I wasn't in a great place at that time, and there's no question I needed some time to step away and just sort of regroup, and it's been 5 years and figured out what I wanted to do, and ready to attack this. I would have never taken this job if I didn't think I was capable of doing it.
I've read where you want to bring Butler basketball back to relevance. As you look at that opportunity, that challenge in the Big East Conference, which is a meat grinder of a basketball conference, what things do you feel you need to do to get the program where you'd like it to be?
Yeah, well, I think we've got to continue to recruit the best players that we possibly can, and but I also think and it's another thing I love about Butler. We got to recruit the right type of kids, and guys that I can relate to, that I can coach, guys that want to get better. I think as we begin to build this culture and do the things that we want to do in this program, we know it starts at the bottom, and I think from that perspective, that's probably, this being in the business world, it's just the everyday building that your culture in terms of what you want to do now, as you build that culture and you've got great players in there. And I really like our team. That's when things really start to click.
We have much more ahead with Butler University men's basketball coach Thad Matta. Grew up in Hoopeston, Illinois, and we're going to talk about that, the son of a coach. And I'm going to ask him the question everyone wants to know, and that is, what is a corn jerker? And that is when we continue on the Business and Beyond podcast. Stay with us.
This is Alex Brown. Get caught up on the state's top business news every business day with Inside Indiana Business Radio on demand. This twice-daily podcast features our statewide Inside Indiana Business Radio reports with additional bonus content that you can listen to anytime, anywhere. You can listen now on the podcast page at InsideIndianaBusiness.com or subscribe for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week is Butler men's basketball coach Thad Matta. And Coach, not a surprise at all that you are a basketball coach. You became a basketball coach. You're the son of a coach, right? A legendary coach. Your dad, Jim, talk about his success and his status in Illinois high school basketball.
Well, I think just from the standpoint of it's funny. I grew up and I just wanted to be my dad. I wanted to be a high school basketball coach and come home and have dinner with my family every night and take my kids to the gym but I was raised in a gymnasium. When I was in grade school, I would take the bus over and watch whatever practice. If it was football, basketball, baseball, track, or whatever. And I had the luxury at the end of the night to sit in my dad's office, and all the coaches would sit in there and talk and go through practice, that sort of thing. So I don't know if I could have had a better upbringing for what I ultimately wanted to do. I think growing up in a small town as you did, just the morals and the values that you were taught. Hoopeston was a farming community. It was known as the sweet corn capital of the world. You had American Can, Joan of Arc, Stokely's, FMC were there. And, as a youngster, riding your bike through town and seeing those guys out there on their break, official drink of my hometown was Mountain Dew, and they'd be drinking a Mountain Dew. But that taught you work. It taught the commitment. I mean, those guys were committed to their companies, and so, like I said, I just I would not trade one second of my childhood and just the upbringing and what it did for me to get to where I am today.
Yeah, what you just said maybe kind of partially answered my next question, which is the nickname of Hoopeston High School, the Corn Jerkers. That has to be one of the most unique nicknames in all of sports. What is a corn jerker?
Well, it's funny because when I think this is like back in the 30s, it was a farming community from detasseling to, I picked corn out of corn as a kid, corn out of beans, but the kids, they would, go up and down and jerk the corn off the stalks and, throw them in the big truck that I'm sure horses were pulling at that time, but that's how it originated. And it is probably one of the most unique nicknames in all of sports, not just high school sports.
Well, talk about your high school career, because you put up some big numbers, had a great career in high school. And tell me about that and the recruiting process. Who all was interested in you as a collegiate player to try to get you on campus?
Yeah. Well, it's funny, had a great high school career. And, I tell these kids nowadays, like, man, enjoy your high school team, because think about it. You played peewee football with those guys. You played baseball with them. You played basketball and just the friendships. You grow up, staying at each other's house, that sort of thing. And those times are so special. I think, through the recruiting, I was not as good as my numbers were. And it's funny, I always tell our coaches, recruit guys that aren't like me. And in terms of a player, but I started at Southern Illinois for 1 year and then transferred to Butler, and which was the greatest decision for me. The recruiting process back then wasn't like it is now. The summer AAU, we didn't have that stuff. It was back where you went to camps and coaches would come out and watch your high school team play, that sort of thing. It was a completely different world back then. But, I think going through that, obviously, just the relationships I built with college coaches, I didn't know it at the time, but I was taking mental notes of what I liked and what I didn't like.
Coach, you mentioned the special nature of high school sports, high school basketball, in this case. You mentioned the AAU. It's just a fact of life, a way of life. Do you think some of that I don't know what I'd call it, but that special nature of high school basketball is lost a bit in this age of travel basketball, AAU, and all those types of things, that the importance, if you will, placed on high school is lessened? Is that?
I probably, yes, it has been. There's no more that pride of what you're representing, and I go back to and we had, the whole town, the whole community, the gym set maybe 2,000, and they'd probably cram 3,000 people in there. And that was the event. That was the togetherness of the city. Or town, not city, but it was thriving. It was, from, the downtown, people painting their windows and you just felt that pride, and you don't see that as much anymore. Even the which is probably almost impossible now, but like multi-sport athletes, guys that played multiple sports, and it is a different deal But, back then in recruiting, you recruited the kid and his parents. Now,
Mhm.
there's so many other people that you're involved, which I'm not opposed to at all, but it is a different ballgame now in terms of how that works.
Yeah, you mentioned you started at Southern Illinois, transferred to Butler. What do you remember? I think in doing some research, I read something about this. What do you remember about your first recruiting trip to Butler and walking into Hinkle?
Yeah, my dad and I, it was a Saturday morning and we had driven over, and I just remember walking in Hinkle Fieldhouse and looking, and the sun was coming down on the court. And I said, hey, I'm coming here. This is where I want to be. And back then for me, Gary, I just loved to play. I was a guy, I loved to practice. I just loved being in the gymnasium, in terms of making the NCAA tournament or the NIT, or I just wanted to get out there and play. And I knew I wasn't going on to the NBA. And so I was going to have as much fun as I possibly could in my time playing, and just had a wonderful experience here.
What do you remember most? You had a very solid career at Butler as a starter, put up some nice numbers. What are your maybe a favorite memory or two from your time as a student athlete at Butler?
Oh, God, I tell you what, there's so many, but I think, the overall thing is just the friendships that I developed, not only with the teammates, but guys at Butler. And, there's probably not a week that goes by I don't pick up the phone and call a Butler classmate and ask for legal advice or financial advice or whatever, because these guys have all gone on. I always tell the story. I tell it to recruits. I graduated with 5 guys in my senior class, and tell me which one was the dumb guy. 2 guys went on to law school and became prominent lawyers. 2 guys went into business. Both guys own their own business. One actually just sold his for $300 million, and one guy went into coaching. So who was the dumb guy in the senior class in 1990? But, it's just the memories here. It's funny. Our trainer, Ralph Reef, and I were talking about it yesterday. We actually practiced yesterday. It was November 29th. And, used to have that element. October 15th was the first day. And, you'd wake up in the morning like, all right, our first practice. Now we had a team meeting last week to get started for school on Tuesday night. And I told the guys, I said, this used to be like an hour-long meeting, but we've been meeting every day since May. So there's really not a whole lot to be said now. But no, I don't know. I think, when you talk about the memories, and I tell kids this, I think college is the funnest time of your life. And every guy that I've had that has left to go to the NBA early, when I'd ask them, what do you miss the most? And they said, Coach, I miss college. I miss going to class. I miss being around the student body. I miss walking on campus. And, those are things that as you look back, I had to go on campus last week and I'm looking around, I'm just like, wow, it's been, I'd like to think 10 years, but it's been over 30 years since I was doing that here, and just all the memories that come through your mind.
Yeah. Very good point. Hey, you made me think in terms of that college experience. Greg Oden, obviously one of the most heavily recruited Indianapolis kids for years. You recruited him to Ohio State, played there. Now you've got him back on. Yes. He's on your staff now, right? Yes. Talk about that relationship with Greg.
Well, it's something. Greg has always had a feel to go into coaching, and being able to bring him back here and get him started in this crazy coaching profession. When Greg and Michael Conley decided to come to Ohio State, they really took a chance on us. We were new at Ohio State. We were still serving self-imposed sanctions at the time, away from the previous staff. They kind of took a leap of faith, and I've always been one that never underestimate what my players did for me. I've never gotten a point or a rebound, but Greg's got a heck of a story. I mean, 1 year of college, he did go back to Ohio State, earned his degree, and I think that speaks volumes of who he is. I think he's going to be a terrific coach. I really do.
You mentioned that crazy coaching world, and 17 years with Thad Matta as a head coach, Butler, Ohio State, Xavier, but also in 400 plus wins, approaching 500 wins, 74% winning percentage, some amazing numbers. But also, and I always find this interesting, is that path to get to a head coaching job. So assistant jobs, Indiana State, Butler, Western Carolina, Miami of Ohio. The attention now is on the head coaches and all the great things they're doing. Talk about that path to get there, because it's just, to me, I always marvel at coaches, whether it's basketball or football, and what they go through, to get to work up the ladder to get to that head coaching spot.
Gary, in all the interviews I've ever done, nobody's ever really asked me about this. And I think it's one of the most fascinating aspects of coaching that nobody talks about. I went, as you said, I started at Indiana State as a GA, and fortunately they had GAs. I would never be where I was today if I didn't have that opportunity. But, I came back to Butler for 3 years and was really like in an administrative role, but knew I just wanted to coach. And, it's funny because one of the managers at the time, he and I would sit and watch practice every single day. He'd sit up top with me, a guy named Scott Drill.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And, but, from there, I went to Miami, Ohio for 1 year. I went to Western Carolina for 1 year. I went back to Miami, Ohio for 1 year, came back to Butler for 3 years. And I tell this story. I remember I had just gone back to Miami. I was working for a guy named Charlie Coles, and Barry Collier called me one night. It was in the summer, and said, "Hey, just lost my assistant. I want you to come back and be my top assistant." I said, "All right, let me talk to Barbara and I'll call you back tomorrow." So I hang up and I said, "Look, I don't want to go back to Butler." I said, "We're going to be loaded next year." And they actually went to the Sweet 16, had Wally Zerbiak.
Oh yeah. Wow.
So when I went in to see my boss next morning, I said, "Hey, I got offered a job at Butler." And I said, "Don't worry, I'm not going to take it." He says, No. He says, "You have to take the job."
Huh.
I said, "What?" He goes, "Barry Collier's trying to get out of Butler. You're going to be the next head coach of Butler." And
wow.
I'll be darned, 3 years later, I was the head coach of Butler.
And that's exactly what happened. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But, I think back to those days and I still think maybe the funnest year I ever had of coaching was at Western Carolina. And in fact, I just got a call last night. They're going to induct the team that we coached into the Hall of Fame down there. And, but just the innocence and being an assistant coach and you were doing everything under the sun. Now, you watch a college basketball game and there's more people in suits than there are.
Yeah.
Players,
in uniform. Yeah.
What do these people do? But I think, just that, you think of all the stories or all the times that you had as an assistant, hoping and praying that you got your chance to be a head coach. And I've always said this, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I'll be the first to admit it of how things happen for me. But, I did pay my dues. There's no question about it.
Yeah, Coach, I ask this question a lot, and sometimes I think it's unfair because every successful person has multiple people, mentors and people who've helped them along the way. But as you reflect back on maybe a couple of key people who have influenced you in your life and your profession, anybody you can point to and talk about their impact on your life?
Well, I would obviously start with my father, because I think just the way I was raised, as we talked about earlier, and just, seeing the lives that he touched, I think every guy that I ever worked for, from Tate's Lock to Barry Collier to Herb Sendek to Phil Hopkins, I think I learned something from all of those guys. I think, I would probably give the most credit to Coach Collier, just in terms of bringing me back here. And I was able to learn how to run a program. I think I've been pretty blessed in terms of who sort of has been a part of my life along the way that has helped me. And even, assistants that I've had or that I've worked with, I learned a ton from those guys. I've had some great experiences there too.
And it sounds like you want to give it back or pay it back, if you will, in mentoring people like a Greg Oden and his journey to be a coach. And I assume that's important to you as well.
Well, it is, because I think nowadays, and man, you see these coaches and they're insecure. They're trying to get their next contract. They're trying to get as money as they possibly can. And I think that's one thing. And I saw this from Tom Izzo and Bo Ryan when I went into the Big Ten. Those guys were about helping the young guys and helping those guys climb. And to me, that's what great leadership is. You're obviously making your coaches better, but you're preparing them to go on and do life's good work. And that's something that has always been, even when I was a young head coach, it was very, very important to me.
Okay, Coach, as we wrap up, just give us maybe a quick outlook on what fans can expect from this first Thad Matta team returning to Butler. What kind of team going to have this year?
I think the jury's still out a little bit. No, we did have an advantage in terms of, we were able to take a 10-day trip to Italy and Greece.
Yep.
We got some practice under our belt. I like this team. It's just now we've got to continue to really, really, the trip helped us implement a lot of things. And now we have to start teaching to the finest details of how we want to play and what we want to do. And we actually started that yesterday of just really breaking things down. But, I think that we've got some really good pieces to the puzzle. And I think if you asked any of my players what is on my mind the most is shooting. We've got to be able to make shots. But I think defensively with our length, with our athleticism, we could be a very, very good defensive team as well.
So you're going to have a lot of people rooting for you and the Bulldogs this season, Coach Matta. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us. You're a great interview and a really good guy. And I'm glad you grew up not too far away from my hometown in Clinton, Indiana. So great to talk to a local guy who grew up in a small town.
Hey, always a pleasure, my man. Thank you.
Okay. And thank you for joining us on this edition of the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. It is a weekly conversation with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can download all of our episodes and get Indiana business news 24/7. All you have to do is go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.